Hello world of YouTube, and welcome to another episode of Viral's Movie Reviews, the show where I take a look at movies that you guys suggest I go to the movies and see, or I feel like discussing. And this month, we're going to be doing something a little different, because in celebration of the launch of Disney Plus and the premiere of the new side story, The Mandalorian, I figured I'd sit down and talk about the last time Lucasfilm and Disney tried to tell a side story within the Star Wars universe, and it ended up being such a divisive bombshell of a movie that it really had to change Disney's perspective on how to tackle Star Wars in the future. And that is Solo, a Star Wars story directed by Ron Howard and a few other peeps, starring Alden Ehrenreich, Woody Harrelson, Emilia Clarke, and Donald Glover. And I was hoping to walk away from this movie enjoying it more than the critical masses, because I've been a pretty adamant defender in entries in the Star Wars saga that people would deem as not good. And in fact, I think this is the best prequel movie we've gotten. And as you can see, I like Star Wars. I'm a gigantic Star Wars fan. If you've been a long-time viewer of the channel, you know that. However, I fall pretty in line with the critical mass as a whole with Solo, a Star Wars story. This film was kind of frustrating to watch for a few reasons. I think that a lot of the complaints people have with it, I would agree with. And its initial backlash is what steered me away from it. I actually didn't watch this movie until yesterday for the first time, and I was incredibly frustrated with it by the end of the runtime, because the whole complaints of it feels like they're just kind of telling abridged facts about Han Solo without really giving the character much more depth or expanding much more on his backstory outside of a few things that people already know. I agree with. Do I think some of those things are cool to see on screen? Absolutely. I think the Kessel Run sequence was fucking dope. And I liked the meeting of him and Chewbacca. I thought it was really sweet. And I think even though Alden Ehrenreich has some acting issues in this film, he seems a bit stiff, seems a bit wooden at times, his interactions with Chewbacca are pretty consistently spot on throughout the entire movie. And I loved that. And I would argue Alden Ehrenreich is not the only actor with issues in this film. I think that Woody Harrelson, while not as bad, seems pretty out of touch with the rest of the film. He's even kind of thrown in as like, I'm Woody Harrelson. And I love Donald Glover, but he is trying way too hard to be Billy Dee Williams in this film. He almost sounds like he's doing an impression of Lando Calrissian as opposed to acting like Lando Calrissian. And I get that that can be hard to do, but I would argue in the points where he shines, Alden Ehrenreich does a good job at being Han Solo without being Harrison Ford. That does not happen with Donald Glover in Lando Calrissian. The whole time, he just seems like he's funneling in this really weird Billy Dee Williams impression outside of one particular scene with Emilia Clarke and his cape, and the scene with L37 and her kind of end. But the rest of his performance was pretty just derivative, in my opinion. My other big issue with the movie that others seem to take issue with is the fact that, like I said, this just feels like a cliff notes of how Han Solo got the stuff that he got. They felt the need to inject every single aspect of everything he had in the original trilogy into this film. You know, clearly there seemed to be some time between where this film left off and A New Hope begins. You could have left some things in the air. You could have even done like a post-credits thing where he gets some of the more iconic stuff, like the Falcon. That makes sense to include why he got that. And the meeting with Chewbacca. I don't give a shit about his dice. I don't give a shit about his blaster, even though it is a dope-ass blaster. You didn't need to shoehorn in that it was a part of this film's adventure. You know, it was frustrating to watch the film in that part. And also, the film was frustrating to watch in general because it's really fucking dark, and it makes the bright aspects, like the brighter scenes in the film, look super saturated. Especially, it happened the scene where they were leaving the mine and they went up to the surface. Like, the bright lights of the surface world were just too intense. It wasn't edited properly in that aspect, and it's frustrating because some of those set pieces I really liked. I also liked the scene where they were scavenging the mine. You know, I get some people had issues with L337 and her kind of pro-droid liberation thing seemed a little shoehorned in, some people felt. I thought it was fine. You know, every droid in a Star Wars film has some kind of eccentric trope, at least ones that are especially protocol type droids or regular droids that aren't like an R2 unit. typically have like a vocal personality. C-3PO is a lot more prim and proper. The dude from Rogue One is a lot more sarcastic and almost feels like HK-47 did in Knights of the Old Republic. And, you know, having L337 be kind of a social advocate for droids, I didn't mind. I thought it was fine. You know, again, given the parts of the film they had her in, it made sense. And again, she was a nice bounce-off to Lando's character, because Lando is this sleek kind of guy, and it was cool to have a kind of point of that to bounce off of. You know what I mean? That personality to bounce off of. I would have liked to have seen it more, because they don't really have a whole lot, but they were too busy doing a whole bunch of other shit in this film. There was another cameo in the film that I thought was neat, but also not wholly necessary near the end of the film, especially since it doesn't set up anything in the greater Star Wars universe. Like, it kind of felt like how he was less or so shoehorned in other aspects of the media, but it felt more shoehorned in here because of the fact that, I mean, I get it. I get the organization that Emilia Clarke's character works for would lead itself to be led by this person. But the fact that they actually had him in the film, outside of, again, like a post-credit scene, felt, again, shoehorned in. There was a lot of aspects of this film that felt shoehorned in and weighed or pulled or held back some of the other aspects of the film that could have been explored more, like Han Solo's character or his origins, as opposed to just, he was always been a marauder, he's stayed a marauder, he's always been just this guy. I don't know. Like I said, this film was frustrating to watch. I liked certain aspects of it. Again, I wouldn't say it's as bad as the worst prequels. I think it's still better than Attack of the Clones or The Phantom Menace. But I would argue it's not as good as Revenge of the Sith or Rogue One, if we're ranking them in the prequels pantheon. But like I said, this film has some charm. It's got some fun sequences, and while I don't think every single aspect of Han Solo's career needed to that was mentioned in the original trilogy needed to be put in here, I liked seeing the Kessel Run. It's something that I know a lot of Star Wars fans have thought about, and I like the execution of it here. Again, Alden Ehrenreich maybe not the worst actor in the film, in my opinion. There's a handful of other people that kind of shoehorned into performance. Paul Bettany was not one of them, though. He was honestly really solid as one of the protagonists in the film. He was pretty decent, and I like that his character and another sort of sect of the galaxy seemingly added another kind of dynamic within the hierarchy of the war going on. That was something else I would have liked to have seen maybe explored a little more outside of, hey, we're going to do a set piece that kind of affirms Han Solo's, allegiance to being a neutral party in the beginning, but also it didn't really need to happen because everyone involved that wasn't Harrison Ford or Han Solo was kind of killed off. Really cool sequence to watch, but I don't think it added a whole lot to the story. I'm going to give Solo, a Star Wars story, a 5 out of 10. Again, not as bad as Phantom Menace, which I would give a 4, and Attack of the Clones, which I would give a 3. But it's not as good as anything else that the Star Wars campus turned out. I'm excited for The Mandalorian. I do plan on watching it because, like I said, I love Star Wars. What do you think of this film a year out? Do you like it? Do you have issues with it? Let me know in the comments down below. I also wanted to make this because you guys, I haven't done it in a while, but I don't just talk about new movies in this segment. I talk about older movies as well. And while this, again, kind of falls out of the jurisdiction of not a big budget blockbuster, it's a film that was divisive. And while I don't necessarily have an opinion that strays too far from the general public, it's a little more in favor than some have given it from what I had seen. Because immediately after I watched this film, I watched a lot of reviews because I was curious. I kind of stayed away from this film for a while, and I felt like that was good. But I do appreciate that I watched it. I liked some of the things that it showed. But I'm going to get out of here. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, be sure to like. If you want to see more of my music, gaming, and general nerdery content, be sure to subscribe. I drop at least 5 videos a week. Special thanks to my patrons if you would like to join their ranks and support the channel as well. Linked in the description to my Patreon. I have tiers. I'm going to be kind of continuing to tool around with it over the next couple of months. At the beginning of the year, I'm going to have a nice big Patreon relaunch. So maybe kind of check in with my social media as well to see where I kind of stand and where I'm keeping updates on that. But I'm gonna get out of here. I've been Viral Rack. You guys like videos, types, situations, and I'll see you another day.